Right, welcome back to the Line Club, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Alexander James Lewis Hughes. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus lately. I haven't got anything done because I'm just doing this on my own budget. But we're here now, and I've got a new guest for you. He's one of the guys that's been around the park scene for a little while now. He's been riding in all the KPL stops and kind of showing people what grabbing, what style, what, making a proper execution in tricks is all about. I'd like to introduce Ewan JASPAN.
Hello, glad to be here. Thanks for hosting this, Alex.
Thanks for joining us on the show, Ewan. So I guess we should get started and we'll take it straight from the beginning. Where did you grow up? Like, what was life like for you as a kid?
Well, I grew up in Scotland, so not actually in Australia like many people might think. And yeah, I moved over here just before I turned 11. And yeah, we moved to Melbourne, to Albert Park or St Kilda area, and started kiteboarding, I guess, a few years after that. But yeah, at first I wasn't too stoked about the move to Australia. For the first few years I was pretty homesick from Scotland and really wanted to move back, and then kind of found the kite scene and something to get into in Australia, and then haven't looked back.
So how did you get into kite surfing then? What was that process?
Well, I'd always, when I was a kid in Scotland, if we did family holidays down to Cornwall in England or stuff like that, I'd fly one of those little stunt kites with the handles, the little triangle ones with battens. And I'd ride that a lot, or not ride it, but fly it. And then when we moved to Australia, I guess my parents were kind of looking for something for me to get into as well, and we lived just one block back from the beach and saw all the kites, and I was really keen to try it. And at first, when I was about 12, I tried to get lessons, but they said I was too light, too young or whatever to take lessons. They were a bit worried about teaching me, I guess. I was pretty small for my age as well. And yeah, then there was this guy, infamous figure in Australia, Alex Sands, who I think might have taught you a thing or two as well.
Yeah, he was definitely I'd say a character around our area, and used to show up at the beach with this big kite truck fueled on vegetable oil and give people goes on stunt kites and all sorts of trippy things.
Yeah, so that's kind of what got me into it. I guess Alex saw me at the beach getting rejected from getting taught at Kite Republic, and he's like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll teach you."
Yep.
And took me to the back of his vegetable oil van, pulled out a little flexifoil trainer kite, and then I think for Christmas I got a little flexifoil 2.5 meter power kite. And just for me and a mate of mine actually, who never really got into kiting, but he got one for Christmas as well from his parents. I guess that was like a joint parents, let's buy both of them a stunt power kite. And then we'd just mess around on the beach when it was super windy. We'd launch the kites and get dragged all the way down, and then they were the ones with the handles where you pull the bottom of the handles to stall the kite in, kind of like fold it backwards, the brake lines. So we just power down the beach, pull the brake lines, then walk back up, hot launch it again, and just fly down the beach. And then I flew that for like a year, and we got really into them on the beach, and we used to look at all the people with the big inflatable kites and think they were just total idiots. And they'd sometimes come in off the water and like tangle with us, and because our lines were just tiny little like strings, they'd always snap our lines and stuff, and we'd be pretty pissed off at them. And then one day I just I figured I better give the inflatable kite thing a go and get on the water after kind of learning all the back rolls and front rolls on the beach. And yeah, got a lesson with Kite Republic, and then bought some really bad old gear and got into it in like 2007, I think.
So you had this little 2.5 meter flexifoil with the handles.
Yeah.
And then you got some gear from Kite Republic just after that.
I actually got gear from Kite Power in Geelong. The shop is no longer open. but it was from Steve McCormack's son, Goshen. So they had some cheap, I guess we're on a pretty tight budget, not knowing if a 13-year-old kid was worth spending brand new money for gear. So I got like a 2003 Best Yaga 7 meter and an Underground FLX 118, I think it was, with custom graphic. It was like Goshen's custom board or something that he was selling, and that was pretty sick. I really liked that board. I had it for a while, but the Best Yaga wasn't really suitable. 7 meter.
What was it? 2003 Best Yaga. Yeah. So
that wasn't really
probably not the best kite at the time.
Not the best. Yeah, for a 13-year-old kid.
No.
So I think I still learnt on that and learnt to ride it. It was pretty funny. It was set up so badly because I think the bar wasn't meant for the kite or something. It was a 4-line sea kite, but I think I had some other bar. But anyway, it was so over-sheeted that I'd pull in and it would backstall so hard that it would have no D-power. And then when I'd sheet out, it would like fill with air again. So for my first like 4 months of kiting, I thought D-power was bar in, because it would backstall it so bad it would just depower, and then to power up I'd put the bar out, so I'd be riding along, and if I'd get overpowered I'd sheet in and it would collapse the kite, kind of like my trainer kite would. So I thought that was normal for a while. And then
I mean, that's a lot of kites, like, I mean, Peter Lynn kind of arc kites back in the day, that was what you did. You like pulled in and it would like stall the kite and make it turn, and then if you sheeted out you would get the power. So
I kind of figured out how to ride like that, and it was alright, and I learnt some jumps and I think some back rolls and stuff like that, but it was pretty out of control. And then when I went into a shop in Melbourne and chatted, just, you know, wanted to go check out the kite shops and stuff, and told them about my gear, and they were pretty like surprised that I was on that gear. And then I got hooked up with a Cabrina Switchblade 8 meter kite, and then
that was the end.
That was it. I'm done. Kite in the tree.
Straight to the power line.
But yeah, and then they were asking me if I knew how to fly it and stuff, and obviously I was like, you know, bar in for D-power, bar out for power. Like, oh man. So I had to like relearn all that. Like, bar in was power and bar out was D-power. And then my start of real kiteboarding, I guess, was when I learnt some stuff on the Switchblades, some basic unhooked Rayleighs and S-bends and stuff, and then Julian Kidd, who used to live in Melbourne, and he's a ex-PKRA judge and ran a magazine called Kiteboarding magazine with Toby.
Yeah, he lives in Cabarete now.
Yeah, he lives in Cabarete now. But he was down the beach and had a brand new 2009 torch. This was in 2008. And he said, oh, you got to try my kite. Like, this was, as bow kites had kind of just come out as well, 2008. Yep. They were like 2 years old, 3 years old. It was I had the third Switchblade, or the second Switchblade. And then I tried his sea kite and instantly was just like, oh, this feels so much better. I can unhook and get slack. I was trying to learn Rayleighs to blind on the Switchblade. I think I had a 6 as well by that point. I was trying on the 6 Switchblade to learn Rayleighs to blind and just kept getting so much tension and kite looping it. And then I took his 9 torch, and instantly that day I think I learned Rayleigh to blind, and then from there I managed to get on some 09 torches, and I've been on torches since then. So I think this is like my 13th year of torches this year.
So when did you actually get like sponsored? Like, when were you starting to get some kind of gear or get a deal for
so when I decided I wanted to ride sea kites or the torch, I messaged Julian, put me in touch with the Nash Australia guys, and I talked to them, and then they at the time were switching Nash from the shop that I was in at the time to Kite Republic. Kite Republic were becoming the Nash dealer in Melbourne, and it kind of was just a good time to work out a bit of a deal. So I got a discount on, I think, a 8 and a 12 torch, and then worked in the shop to pay it off for a bit, and my parents also helped me out with that. So that was end of 2008. I got a shop deal with Nash, and then obviously the next few years just did some national competitions, the state titles, until when I was about 17. Then Nash started giving me free gear, and then when I was 17, when I finished school, they sponsored me kind of internationally to go in the world tour.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, yeah, probably.
But you were riding like near the shop and these people all the time, and they were seeing your like progression and seeing you ride, and could see that you could do tricks, and you were like showing promise to be like a solid rider.
Exactly, like it wasn't just me contacting the Nash guys or trying to push for it with. I mean, then as well, social media didn't exist.
No.
So it was literally like showing up to competitions, showing up to local things, just riding on the beach. Everyone, word of mouth kind of thing, talking to the shops, going on the ride days with Kite Republic. I'd just go and they'd take me along, and I'd help out some people and just go riding. And then I think my main progression was one summer I went to stay with Simon Witcherman in Western Australia when I was about 16, just 15 turning 16. I went to stay with him, and that was the first time I'd ridden Safety Bay.
And Simon Witcherman, if you don't know, is notorious for the kite loop front mode. You might have seen it on the internet.
In Newcal.
He just goes insanely high and looks like he could be dead.
Yeah.
I'll put it in the description below. You can check it out.
We'll might even just overlay that over this for a second. Yeah, could be good. You'll have a look at it. But yeah, Simon was riding really well at the time. He was like one of the best riders in Australia. And he was a Nash rider as well. So when I went to a national competition the year before in Tannum Sands at the Nationals, I met Simon there through the Nash guys, and then he said I should come stay with him over summer and work on my kiting. And yeah, at that competition I was kind of doing like S-bends to blind and back rolls to blind, and I don't think I could do 313s or anything the other way. And then I went and spent a month with Simon. We rode Woodman Point and Safety Bay and learnt a lot of tricks at that event, and then came home from there, and we had the Nationals in St Kilda, I think was the next one, at my home spot. And yeah, the previous one I came like last, like didn't get a result in anything. And then at that one in St Kilda I got third in the men's and second in the juniors. I think Andy Yates won that one. Yeah,
I think I remember.
And yeah, so that was a really big 6 months of progression that summer, and I think that's when Nash started kind of taking a bit more notice of me in Australia. And I got, after that Nationals, that's when they started giving me gear properly, not just the shop deal, and Kite Republic were obviously still supporting it too. But I think that summer was kind of the start of where I started taking kiting a lot more seriously.
Yeah, so you built it up, you did a few trips, you went to Western Australia for a season, really honed in your skills, and then went to the Nationals and got a solid result in the Nationals against guys like Andy Yates, who was competing on the world tour at the time. Yeah,
I mean, obviously Andy still was like a level ahead, but it was the first time someone else for a few years, I guess Keahi also came second. He was riding pretty good in freestyle at that time, but still also quite a large step down from Andy. But I felt like I was really close to Keahi that event, whereas before Keahi was like the junior champion for years and years and years. Yeah. And then that event, I kind of thought that I definitely had a shot of beating Keahi. We were doing pretty much the same tricks. I think I had a few extra 180s sometimes, but his style was a lot better, and I think I really realised at that event that his style was a lot better, and I had to work on my execution and just things like I'd land a lot and my feet would blast out my foot straps. We had those funny Nash foot straps at the time, you know, those big white sandals that they used to have. That was a hard year for competing in those sandals. I had a lot of landings where my feet just flew out of them.
Yeah, they look kind of like Crocs or something for anyone that hasn't seen what these things look like.
Yeah, so I think I struggled with my consistency, and also I was really focused. I'd learned all these new tricks in WA, in Perth, that I really wanted to put in the competition, but I wasn't quite consistent with them yet, so I had quite a few crashes. Like, I was learning those old school front mobs, and I was trying them in the competition and getting around to toe side, which, as anyone who's seen an old school front mob, it's like the worst thing ever. If you just come around to toe side, it's just obviously not what anyone's trying to do. And then I'd learnt back mobs both ways, but my switch one was still really dangly. And then I was trying all these kite loop handle pass tricks as well, and whereas Keahi was going out and just doing like really nice front mobs, 313s, backside 313s, double S to blind, I think he did in the final as well, which was like, I remember seeing that and I was like, oh man, that's alright, he's won it. But up to then, we were going like toe to toe really close. And I think even the next nationals, he still beat me again, even though by then, sorry Keahi, but I think I was a much better freestyle rider by then than Keahi.
Yeah. What was that, Alva?
That was at Alva.
Yeah.
Free ride sessions, I was learning a lot more tricks, but competition, he still had his tricks.
Yeah, I mean, he was really consistent.
So consistent, and he had a really nice style as well.
At the things he did, he was really good at doing them, just because, I mean, he'd grown up as a little kid just going to all the comps, doing like the set tricks he needed to do to like win heats.
Yeah.
And
he'd done so many competitions.
Yeah, he'd just done it so many times that I think having that skill set for a competition gives him like a big advantage over someone else who's trying to come up against him.
Yeah. So that was interesting. Even the next one, that I really felt like I was going to win the juniors that year, but he still beat me. But I was like, by that point I was feeling pretty confident in my riding and pretty upset with that result too. Yeah.
Well,
where were we?
We were talking. I wanted to take it back a bit anyway. We were talking about getting sponsored, and you were saying how things have changed a lot now, because back when you started getting sponsored, there was no social media, there was no Instagram, nothing to like show what you're doing online, and you really needed to go to the beach and have people see you ride in competitions and stuff like this. How do you think that kind of landscape's changed for young riders now that are trying to come up? Do you think it's a good thing for them, or do you think it's not really working so well in our sport?
Well, I think it's, on the whole, I don't believe social media has been great for our sport. I mean, yes, it seems like everyone now has a platform to show themselves to the world, but I think if you look at like numbers and sales and level of the level of riding's gone up, but I just don't think that the natural progression of the sport without social media would be any different to where it is with social media. Plus, I think that there's a lot of people who can kind of fake it now with social media.
Yeah.
There's not as big an emphasis on riding ability anymore. Whereas when I was coming up, it was, I mean, so much was focused on comp results or tricks you could do, or have you heard this guy could do that trick, or or just turning up to, just being at events and showing your riding and promoting the gear. Whereas now it's crazy how you literally just could buy followers, make, like, I'm sure if you really wanted to, you could make a fake persona, get stock photos off the internet, post a bunch of stuff, and probably end up getting free kites.
Or even just products, or promoting products for certain brands that aren't kiteboarding.
Yeah. So I guess that's a bit of an issue, but I think there's definitely less of an emphasis on riding ability now, but it also shows that right now, because everyone's got that platform, the market's become pretty saturated. A lot of people can reach thousands of people for free now, so brands can be like, we can target 30,000 people through this person's channel so easily, and even though it might not be the most like effective use of 30,000 followers, you can still see it as, which is obviously a thing that's, well, I mean, if you as a company see you're reaching 30,000 people, no matter how it is, it's obviously going to be of somewhat use. Yeah. But I think now it shows that kids coming up, it's really hard right now to become a paid pro kiteboarder. I think because of that, because everyone will do it for free, because everyone's got 30,000 followers now. There's so many kids growing up who kind of ask for advice or what they should do, and it's really hard to say, because when I went down their path, things were so different, and it was a bit more straightforward as well. It was like, man, just film, turn up to events, get really good at kiteboarding, and you'll be a pro.
Well, yeah, I think that's where, if there's anything that's sort of misguiding riders or younger people trying to get sponsored, is that they don't really have a clear explanation of what it is they need to do. It's like, okay, do I get really good at kiteboarding and spend all my time doing that, or do I just get okay at kiteboarding and spend the rest of my time on the internet trying to buy likes and followers and like changing how I look to make people think I'm better than I am or something?
Yeah, like there's so many people just like that who spend so much time on their image online, on their Instagram, on their Facebook, on their vlogs or whatever, that if they put that much time into their kiting, they would be such better kiters, and then probably the sad thing is probably get to a similar stage as where they are, as if they do put all that time into Instagram. But I think it's a lot more like legitimate and fulfilling way to be a pro kiteboarder is to actually have it through your kiteboarding and not through your social media. And
I think that the social media and like really pushing all that is like more of an instant way to get somewhere. But at some point there's just going to be people that are questioning, why is this person sponsored? And if you've got like certain people saying things like that about you, it's like only really a matter of time until you're probably not sponsored anymore eventually. For sure. Whereas if you're actually putting time into riding and becoming a good rider, that's like a much like longer path I think you can take, because if people really recognize that you're good at kiteboarding, there will be things coming back to your sponsors and stuff from different places just because they're hyped on seeing you kiteboard. No one's really going to say to your sponsors, well, I was really hyped on that hike what's his name took on their Instagram the other day. Like, you know, it actually needs to be some form of kiteboarding content for people to get, you know, stoked about you above anything else that's happening in kiteboarding.
Yeah, for sure. And if you spend more time in that and get better at kiteboarding, you talk to people about gear, you get more in tune with gear, you get more in tune with the industry in general, and then maybe when you are not a good rider anymore, you've got so many good contacts and knowledge about the sport that you've got a lifetime, like, life path in the sport where you can get a job or work somewhere in the industry that's a lot more long term. Whereas if you're just a social media person, that doesn't really help a brand in the long term either.
I mean, if you've invested all your time into working out how information technology marketing is working, you haven't really invested your time into knowing how the gear works and how it tuned and how to, you know, get the most out of the gear and help a brand with R&D or help a brand with, you know, going to a shop, showing them how to set something up, all this kind of stuff. And like, that's really, if you're ever going to get a job in the industry, that's the kind of thing that brands are looking for. Like, there's one person that can be the marketing person usually. There's a whole heap of other jobs in a brand for testing various equipment and doing stuff. So yeah, that's something obviously to think about for all those kids out there that are asking, how do I get sponsored? What do I do? Like, what's the easiest way to kind of get to the top? And I think, you got the answer there. It's not really an easy solution.
No, there's so many different ways, but you just need to think about what will be the most sustainable and helpful way to your brand, not the quick, easy fix.
That said, I mean, the whole, you know, boom in social media and everything like that is giving you a good opportunity as a rider, as a kid, to put yourself out there. Because when I was a kid, when Ewans was coming up, we didn't have that kind of platform. And for us, coming from a place like Australia, which is basically just completely isolated, brands aren't even interested in sponsoring you because they don't see what's happening. You didn't have your tricks online, you didn't have anything. It was just word of mouth through people. So, I mean, there's the good and bads from the internet and everything. And I think, as you know, it's giving a wider opportunity to more riders to do something in the sport if they really want to. It's
obviously still important as well. You can't just, like, that is the way of the world right now, is social media is important. You have to be active on it. It's just not the be all and end all. If you just make sure not to put all your focus on that, and put a lot more focus into real face-to-face interactions and your riding and knowing people from the shops and the retailers, because in the end that's how, as a pro kiteboarder, you survive, is by shops selling gear. Like that's it, that's the one thing, is shops selling gear. So you need to keep all those guys happy, keep the industry happy, really invest your time back into the industry and in real life conversations. And yeah, I think that's definitely the best advice you could give to someone coming up.
Okay, so when was it that you went from being the flow rider or whatever, or having a slight discount from a shop, to, you know, changing to that full sponsorship deal from a brand like Nash? When did that happen, and how did that all happen?
I guess at the end of my last year of school, of high school, at the start of the year, we started talking about it with Nash, what my next deal was going to be. And I actually was talking to a few other brands as well who were kind of keen to support me to do the world tour. But yeah, I ended up sticking with Nash, as it was who'd supported me since I was started. So and then, so that was end of 2011, so I was 17, and instead of at the end of school in Australia, usually you go somewhere with a bunch of friends, it's called schoolies. I'm sure it's the same kind of thing in lots of other countries, but yeah, in Australia it's schoolies, and a lot of my friends were going to Byron Bay for schoolies. And I decided instead I was going to go to Newcastle for the PKRA, the last PKRA stop of the year, and that's kind of when Nash paid for that trip for me. And I think I got, like, I made it through the trials and then got 17th or something, like last.
Yeah.
But I met all the people on the tour then. I went there by myself, so I met all the people on the tour. Kind of did alright. I rode a lot, like I just rode all day every day. Whereas I guess, so it was probably weird seeing this Grom come for all the competitors there. They kind of just turn up before the event, get a little session in to make sure they've got their tricks, and then go compete. And most people don't actually ride that much. But I just rode the whole time and learnt a lot of tricks too. And then, yeah, end of the year, with Nash, they said they'd help support me to do the PKRA, which, yeah, if we're talking about the PKRA, I guess, just if you don't know, that was the world tour until 2014 or so, something like that. 2013 maybe, 2015, I don't know.
No, I think it was longer, no? I think it might have been till 2016. No, it was because when I came and then
back
it was
from my
VKWC
injury,
after that.
Yeah, I think VKWC was maybe 2016. So PKRA was maybe up to 2015.
Yeah, could be.
Something
could be
like
right.
that. Anyway, so if you don't know, the World Tour changes names a lot of time. But back then, when I was doing it, it was called the PKRA, which is what it was called forever until it finished. But yeah, they sponsored me to do that for the year. Obviously still on a pretty tight budget, but it was enough to get to the event. So I think I got a little bit of prize money, which really helped, like get the next plane ticket or pay for the hotel accommodation at the event or whatever it was. And came the end of the year, I started off kind of bad, and then to the end, I think in China I had a few good results. And then I did the tour again, so pretty similar deal. I think it was the exact same deal the next year. And then towards the end of the year in September or something in China, I injured my shoulder, so that was 2012. And then couldn't compete in the last event, and went home, and still my shoulder was bad after like 4 or 5 months, and then in January I got surgery on it. And then so I was out for like the whole year, or until the end of the year, and then I broke my ankle, and then that was the rest of the year again, and then the next year too. So the first year Nash supported me again through my injury, and then the second year it was like a whole nother year out. So Nash were like, okay, we can't really like obviously for them, obviously like a second year in a row of being injured for a rider who's just an up and comer, you can't keep paying them to do like nothing. So I went to and did some university instead.
So you went to do the world tour in 2015.
So 2012 and 13 I did the world tour. So sorry, to the end of 2013 I did my shoulder. So I was out for the rest of that year.
Then you were out the next year.
And I was out all of 2014. So half 2013, all of 2014, and the first half of 2015.
Okay, so you were pretty much out for 2 years and a bit.
Like, no, a little bit under 2 years, probably like. But I was still at this when I came back, still probably riding a bit early. So it was 2 years. So
when you're at the world tour to begin with, what kind of tricks and stuff were you doing at these first stops?
So as I was saying earlier, with like the competitions in Australia, I remember really having to focus on my execution and stuff. And so for the first year, I think, so I just started riding boots end of 2011. I remember Alex Pastor at the end of 2011 at that Newcastle stop was like the first guy to ride boots and win the competition.
Well, Dre did back in the day, but yeah. At that point in time, he was the only one that wore boots again while everyone had straps. Yeah. And he won. And
I don't think Dre ever won a PKRA.
I think he won a few PKRAs. He just didn't win the world title with boots. But
so Pastor did then, and then the first event next year, I was riding boots as well. I actually, because I hurt sprained my ankle over summer, but I wanted to ride, so I just started riding boots more often. And then I was like, okay, I can ride better. And yeah, with the execution, I was like focusing on execution in boots, and I could land a lot harder. So for that year, for the first few events, actually, I was still like the only one riding boots, me and Alex Pastor, and I think Seb Garrett as well. And then, so for that first year, I wasn't really doing any tech tricks. I mean, then there wasn't that many people doing like proper double handle passes and stuff. There was like the front mobs to blind and the back mob sevens and some backside 315, stuff like that. But I was just focusing on just doing all the mobs really big and powered, and I think I was putting in a few grabs as well, which I remember was scoring really well straight away because no one else was doing them. So I was doing like stale KGBs, melon front mob 5s, and they were probably the only grabs. But I also did a lot of toe side tricks in my first year, which no one else was doing either. So I think some people were actually kind of pissed when I'd beat them because I wouldn't do any of the dangle double passes and stuff. But I'd go out, and I remember one event in Italy, I think I got 5th. There was only the singles, so 5th isn't quite as good as in the double elimination, but I beat a few people doing like I did a crow mob and a tootsie roll. Both toe side tricks. I did grab KGB, grab front mob.
Well, back then I judged the world tour back then, and the criteria was actually aimed towards
doing
an execution of riding and having your kite in a steady position, kite at 45, power. The whole criteria was aimed at that type of riding. It's just that people weren't executing that type of riding. I mean, the majority of people were just doing, what each other were doing. They were just copying each other, but not really thinking about what the criteria itself actually said and how it was laid out. So if you did that stuff, you were rewarded for it. It's just that people weren't really doing it at the time.
So you'd still you would always judge, okay, the more tech person won because they both did the same execution. Whereas when someone would come in and do it, good execution, like I remember I got one year in Newcastle, I did I think it was just as the trick started getting scores. The first year was overall impression I did, the second year was scores, I think. But yeah, I did just a front mob, but a really, really big one with a melon grab, and got like a 8.5 or something. And I remember there was like formal complaints about it. Like some of the riders were really pissed off that I'd just done one handle pass with a 360 and got like over an 8. But I remember some people were super stoked on it. I think Renault told me that stood out to me. He was like, that was one of the best like single handle passes I've ever seen. But there was a lot of people who were just like, not a lot of people, but there was a few people.
Yeah, some people weren't stoked.
Were kind of pissed that a basic trick,
something so technical could score so well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that whole period in time, people had just followed each other.
Yeah.
It wasn't like one person was standing out from the other so much. They were all doing like very similar things in straps for a really long time. And I think that, like you said, the first year you were riding, they had an overall impression, which was also, when I think that might have been the first or second year I was judging, was also just crazy to me. I turned up and all you had to do was put down who you thought won on the paper. I'm like, well, aren't we putting down scores, or aren't we doing anything here? And they're like, no, why would we be doing that? You just pick who won. I'm like, well, how can you choose who won? They're just all doing like tons, like 14 tricks in a heat or something at that point.
They just go nuts.
So you're watching like maybe upwards of 30 tricks in a heat and then just trying to decide at the end who won.
Yeah, and that's if it was a one-on-one. It was like 3 or 4 man heats.
Well, yeah, 4-man heats. And all that would happen usually is that someone would do something big towards the end of the heat, and that's all the people would remember, and they'd just say that he won. So I think that, the points coming into the judging equation really helped change the whole criteria as well. Even though the criteria had been set like that, I think having points down on paper made people really think, oh, what was that worth when they were judging? And then they thought, oh, well, the execution was good, this was good, and they'd put a point down instead of just thinking back later or looking at a piece of paper that said front mobe. Front mobe 5. Oh, that's better.
That was it.
Yeah, that's all they were doing before. So, I mean, it's a continual progression, but
I mean, the competition was definitely. I feel for a while the competition was really going in a good direction when there was a good group of judges as well then who were really dedicated to the sport and the progression of the sport, and I feel the right things for a board sport, which is execution and style and showing that you can ride different to other people rather than just, I guess. Now there are definitely still some aspects of that. There's still some amazing tricks that go down on the tour, far more technical than ever when I was there. But I also feel that it's kind of lost its style of riding, and people trying to have a point of difference to each other. It's literally just, I can add an extra 180 to that, or I can go bigger, or I can send my kite lower than you, kind of thing, which isn't really as sustainable. I mean, back then there was so many different styles on the tour when I was riding. Like you'd watch a heat of, say, Aaron versus Kevin, 2 of the furthest different styles from each other, or Alex Pastor when he came in, and then Yuri Zun would come in and have, even though like it was more when the overall impression thing with the combos and all those things, you'd like watch all these heats and everyone would kind of be
they had their own thing.
Everyone had their own thing. Now I feel like the tour has kind of, the judging has gone away from trying to prove something different, or trying to do switch tricks, or trying to grab, or trying to do toe side. It's literally just everyone's pushing the same tricks with an extra 180, and I feel like we could maybe take it back a bit more to trying to prove you can ride different to other people.
Well, I think it's just a product of when you're a judge and you're judging, it is really difficult to be put on the spot and then say, well, this person did a lesser trick better and I'm going to give them a higher score. And if you're not a really, I think, like, confident person or confident judge, it's much easier just to resort back to, well, that person on a linear scale did more because they spun more. So more rotation equals more score is a much easier thing to process as a judge, especially when you're looking at a lot of different tricks for a whole day. Judging's really, really tiring. And to judge with, you know, more the kite in mind, the style in mind, the execution in mind,
takes a lot.
There's like 3 more variables you need to think about other than just rotation. So,
and it also does get hard trying to quantify, how do I rate a tail grab front to blind really big versus a double hintermobe 5? Like, where do you rank those against each other? They're like, one is just complete spin to win, and the other one is really trying to focus on power and style. They're obviously, one's super technical in the spin to win type style, and the other one's, I don't know, you're obviously trying to push the grab and the execution. So I think I mean, I don't really know. I haven't been around a world tour stop for quite a few years, so
Yeah.
and I also haven't really talked to the judges too much lately. So, but that's as an outside perspective, kind of
Yeah.
how I see it right now. But who knows as well? Maybe if someone did go to an event and try and ride super different, maybe they would do really well still. Maybe it's kind of just the riders that are all really pushing the extra 180s onto each other. I think maybe when Bebe started coming into the events and just going more tech than anyone had ever seen, and obviously dominating because it was just so insanely technical,
Yeah.
that maybe that made everyone think, shit, we need to get really technical now, because that's the only way to beat Bebe. You can't beat someone in a comp really who's doing a backside 319 in a heat
No.
with stylish stuff, like going out and, I mean, at some point you could, but really I think a lot of kids just saw that and been like,
Yeah.
okay, that's what we need to do.
I mean, there was definitely that influence he had for sure, because if you see, you know, any kid, they just look at who's winning the competition,
Yeah.
and then they just want to be like that person.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can't really expect that they would want to do things of a lesser degree, but to do them well. And I think also having more of, you know, an outlook of like how a trick looks and how it's executed and stuff is something that you grow with over time.
Yeah.
And a lot of kiteboarders that are on a world tour, or a lot of the kiteboarders that are sponsored these days, are actually really young people.
Yeah.
They haven't had a lot of time to gain a perspective on certain tricks, and like they haven't had that, you know, they just haven't had experience and time to really like dial in a trick. It might seem like, oh, it's easy to do a grab front to blind well, but I know a lot of people that could do a lot more technical tricks than that, and they still couldn't do a simple grab front to blind, like with any grab at all. So there is, you know, a few different aspects in it. It's one that they're not really rewarded for doing something more simple, and two, why would they do that then when it's not really, you know, it's not looking any harder to anyone? Like, if the perspective is that it's not a harder trick, why would they spend time to learn it? So that would just it's easy to be pushed in that direction regardless.
I mean, comps are just a kind of hard thing for a board sport in general, where it's a sport where you're just expressing yourself through your riding, and it's like, it's not a certain, like a bowl sport or something where you kick a goal or win a point or whatever. So I think comps are just always going to be pretty big topic of, are they judged the right way, are they scored the right way forever. I don't think there's ever going to be a competition that really nails like true board sport mentality. Even
in the Kite Park League, where we're really trying to push that direction, there's always the aspect of just more rotation, more spin that comes into play, because if everyone's on a pretty equal playground, even with style in mind, then it's still like, what's the deciding factor? Well, it's going to be who did more technical trick in the long run.
And sometimes it can just, like, style can be lost on some people, or angles cannot be flattering, and like there's never going to be. And it's just so hard, especially as you say, when you've been judging for a whole day. I mean, I've done a bit of judging as well at lots of different types of events, and everything kind of just meshes into one in your head. And it is just, sometimes when you are writing down the things, you just do have to look at some point the technicality as just, oh man, I can't really remember, like, did his kite loop, or did it come up at the end, or like, oh well, he did a front mode 5, he did a front mode, I can't really remember, oh man, the front mode 5 must have just won, like stuff like that. Shall I put these two in the fridge?
Yeah.
Alright, we're back. It was getting a bit hot in here. We just opened the doors, let some of the breeze in.
Yeah, so when we left off, we were talking about how it's hard to judge technicality over style, and to have a good, you know, balance between those two things when you're judging. And I was just thinking that really made me remember something I've thought about a lot of times while judging over the years, and that's really whether competition results are a good thing to sponsor riders by. Because I always felt like, yes, there's an aspect of, you know, you must be a good rider to compete in a competition and, you know, win against other people. But at the same time, then you're just basing your brand's like image and reputation and everything off of like 3 to 5 judges.
Yeah.
And would that brand, in a different situation, just go ask those judges independently who to sponsor? And I'd probably say no, that they wouldn't. They wouldn't listen to those 5 people without a competition.
Yeah.
But then with a competition in the picture, they are listening to their like idea of who's better and whatnot. So I always thought that was like a really strange conundrum.
Yeah, I guess that is pretty weird, thinking that whoever's judging the World Tour right now has got a lot of influence on who's being sponsored in the kite industry, which is actually fairly accurate right now. There's quite a lot of riders. I mean, there's a lot of riders who don't do the World Tour, but there's a lot of now that there's so many World Tours as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure, but I think quite a few of them have judges that overlap between strapless freestyle and normal freestyle, and wave riding and whatever. So, and big air or
I mean, even back in the day when we had the wave stops, it was like people that, I mean, myself, I judged the waves in the freestyle. I could obviously ride waves, but I'm sure there's like other people that could have been better to judge waves at the same time, and that would produce a different result. And in the brand's mind, that would be like then a different rider maybe that they should be sponsoring, because this guy came first in the world, whereas this guy, who might actually be a better rider, you know, hasn't even done a comp or something.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just important for a brand to have a good spread of... I mean, I think it is still important to support comp riders and support competitions, but I think that... I mean, over the years, there has been a lot of people who have made careers out of just free riding and riding well, but I feel like that part of the sport might be dying a little bit, just with things like, I don't know, the crew and autofocus or whatever. A lot of them didn't compete, but they made really good career in the kite world at the time, or the Freeride Project crew as well, or
I think it's it's a lot harder to make money in that regard, because brands just see every single person as doing that because they're online. Whereas if you're doing competition, the brand would say, well, he's winning a competition, we'll pay him good because he's winning a competition. So, I mean, there's always that that kind of challenge when you're a brand and you need to approach who to sponsor and what's the best way to do it. So maybe we should have a talk about kite videos. What was the first kind of kite videos you saw as a kid? Do you remember, like the very first thing you watched that got you hyped and you're like thinking, oh, I'm going to go in the water, I'm going to try some stuff out of this video?
First one that comes to mind straight away, they're like really weird videos that you wouldn't really like. If I named them, you wouldn't know. There was one of Dre riding at a Cabrina demo in Italy.
I think I remember that video.
And it was just like 6 minutes of handycam footage on the beach. He pretty much didn't do anything.
No.
But he was just riding around like doing really big front to blinds, crashing most of them, doing like a Mobe, a KGB, but it was like really smooth riding. And just like no one else was doing like a proper front to blind at that time. Like literally no one. Like there was a few maybe flippy ones, but Dre was doing like big, slow front to blinds where he'd like drop it to blind at the end. I think he caught some back edges. I think it was Italy at some Cabrina demo.
For those people that don't know, Dre is Andre Phillip. He's if you didn't know, he's one of the original riders that was riding like a more wakeboarding style of kiteboarding, where he was, you know, stalling things out and having a nice clean rotation and
Yeah.
handle pass. And he was
And
probably
hitting the park as well.
yeah, hitting sliders. He was probably one of the first guys that actually did quite a few of the tricks too.
Yeah,
Like
kicker hits too.
proper back mobs, like
Proper back fives off
540s,
kickers.
blind Pete's,
Yeah.
Moby Dicks. Like he did, yeah.
I think actually,
He pretty much pioneered it if he didn't do it anyway, because he was just doing it way better than everyone at the time.
Yeah.
Like he was more than a level above. It was like what people are doing now, it would be fine if he was doing that.
yeah.
And if you looked at anyone else that was back then, they just looked like old school or something.
Yeah, and I think a lot of things that you'd read in magazines as well about Dre, like back then not everything was filmed, not everything was on the internet. There was like, you actually had to read magazines to find out what was happening sometimes, and I'd always read, so other than videos, the magazines, like I'd get every issue of Kiteboarder magazine in Australia, and they were pretty good at following like the good riders and pushing like young riders, or putting 6 sequences in the center spread. So I'd always have like my bedroom wall covered in like pictures of Dre and Aaron doing like 6 sequences. So I think reading a lot of them, you could just see, and you'd read like an article about the Triple S and why Dre won, and people would just be like, man, like I don't even think Dre was doing anything that much more tech, but he was just like coming into the slider like 5 times the speed of anyone else, and actually looking smooth and in control.
Yeah.
And just like wouldn't do weird things with his kite, and he'd do presses and just proper gaps and stylish things, and so he'd just obviously win.
You can look at the videos from back then, and
Yeah.
like there is some stuff from people here and there that's like alright or good, but they couldn't make a video part back then, really. Like the only person that was stringing together a solid video part was Dre.
Yeah. And so back on the topic of what other videos I guess I watched. So I remember that one. I'd watch a bit. I watched a bit of On the Loose, which was Aaron Hadlow and Ruben Lenton. They made some video series. I'd watch, I basically just watched everything Aaron would make.
Yeah.
I'd go on, I wouldn't even go on YouTube, I'd just go, and he used to have this
He
website.
had that website, I remember.
With all of his videos on there. And it was just a little like link to all his YouTube videos. I think he had like his own video uploader as well.
He had it on the side, I think, as
embedded
a
on the site, which was really slow, but I'd just like let it load or like keep it loaded or whatever. So I'd watch all of Aaron's little videos, I think, just from whatever sessions he was doing. He used to have so many videos online. What else did I watch? I would watch quite a lot of big air videos of Ruben and Aaron as well. I guess they're mostly on the loose ones. I think I watched quite a few of Ruben's Storm G's ones, or whatever they were, with some like weird crazy Dutch music in one of the Dutch storms.
What about like DVDs and stuff? Did you have any DVDs?
Yeah. I mean, I had a lot of those progression professional ones. I watched so much progression videos because it was like just that really slow breaking down of the tricks, and I definitely learnt a bit from them. And then I had Kiteboarding 101 and 201 as well, which were like really old progression videos.
They were kind of good
They
though,
were really good though. I think it was like Shannon Best and...
I felt like those, like in my head back then, I haven't watched them for a super long time, but felt like 101 and 201 were probably better than progression.
Yeah.
Because I felt like progression just had so many things wrong in different places that I was like, what are they even saying?
Like progression was maybe done... Well, I mean, it was newer. It was done with a better camera. The voiceovers were really like, they were quite slow, and a lot of people didn't like them, but they were like really clear, and but there was some things that were definitely wrong. Whereas also in Kiteboarding 201, I think they had some tricks that were like, that have almost disappeared now and only just started to come back, like Pete Rose's off the flat and stuff like that. Like there was Mark Shin was doing Pete Rose's off flat or G spots off the flat, which from about 2006 onwards till probably 2013-14 that trick basically didn't exist. I started doing them probably 2014 or so, 15. I mean, there's people doing them in between, but it wasn't like a common trick at all for like 10 years.
I mean, I've definitely was inspired by Shannon Best back
Yeah.
then, because he was the one guy that was doing like 90210,
Yeah.
Pete Rose, and he had that wakeboard background where he had a really good load and pop on his toes, and I'm pretty sure he was the first guy that was doing them, and it was in all those old VHSs. You can go back and they're actually pretty good tricks still. Like, he's just super loaded, hooking in at Kite Beach and just throws them down. It's pretty sick.
Yeah, so he had a lot of good tricks as well, but I just watched loads of YouTube kite videos, or on Seabreeze. Some people would post their stuff. Seabreeze is a local Australian forum that's still going. Or on Kite Scoop as well, there was always some good videos. I was on Kite Scoop for a while, just lurking. I never made an account or anything, so I'd probably just get roasted.
Well, that was pretty normal back then.
Yeah, but there was. I can't remember. I mean, it was so long ago, but I mean, mostly Aaron and Dre for the first few years of my kiting. Those two were who I watched the most.
Well, I remember just being a kid, I would just watch anything. Like,
I'd watch so much
terrible
stuff.
I'd watch some dude at Flag Beach that I didn't even know where that was at the time, just doing like dangly board offs and stuff, like really bad.
Did you ever watch the amazing Andy Herdman?
Yeah, I think I remember those
on
videos.
Delray Beach with that guy who'd just film him and just blow up the whole time. I think he's still online, but he'd just film him and he'd just be riding around doing front rolls, board offs, riding up the beach, and the cameraman would just start screaming and like blow up. And I'd even watch that. I didn't think it was like amazing, but I just
you just wanted to see any
just
content.
wanted to see content. Yeah.
I mean,
there wasn't that, and there was what was the website? Hang Loss, the Dutch one.
I went to that one quite a lot.
I used to go on that because every day you'd be like, oh sweet, I'll wake up and check Hang Loss, see if there's a new video online, and there'd be a new video or two new videos. And that was at a time where every kite video that came out was like, oh sick, there's a kite video out.
Yeah.
There'd be something on YouTube, it'd be like 2 a day. Now there's probably still only 2 a day on YouTube, but on Instagram there's just like a billion things.
It's crazy to think about, like, that was like that back then. You would be like excited to wait for something to come out, when now there's just a complete flood of media all the time, and not very much of it you want to even see. Like,
I mean, it is weird how quickly things change. Like, I remember Hang Loss was like, I'd check it every day. I'd be so stoked if I got on it. I think Ian was running it for a little bit. Ian, one of the old judges on the PKRA, he lives in Belgium, but he was running it, and then he started posting my videos, and I remember being so stoked that I was on Hang Loss.
You've made it. You're on Hang
Loss.
I
was on Hang Loss. But then all of a sudden it just like Facebook started and got bigger for videos, and then I guess maybe around Instagram time starting, but it just websites like that, like third-party websites, just completely died.
I think it was Facebook, then Vimeo, then YouTube, and Instagram started having videos and stuff, and that basically just killed any forum kind of interaction with videos and posting, which is sad, because I think that was a much better platform to actually find content and to see stuff as someone who was interested in it. We still have people, I guess, sharing certain videos, but
it just gets
whatever.
Lost.
It gets lost.
There's no place where you can just go to find, like, Hang Loss would only post decent content.
Yeah, like, that's it. If there's not a filter and there's not somewhere for people to comment, it's just you're never really going to be interacting with it.
Yeah. So.
Well, what was your first decent video part? I would say. You made maybe some little like random videos before that. You put on Seabreeze or something like that.
Well, I mean, I guess first, obviously, I made some really just bad ones at the start. Yeah. But like, I just learned so much from them, because my dad would come down and film, or a friend would film, and then I'd just look at footage, and you'd at least figure out what you were doing. And I would post them on Seabreeze for a while and just get absolutely roasted. Yeah. Like, just completely. The Seabreeze used to have this thing. Now it's where you vote a green thumb or a red thumb. Yeah. And so you'd make a post. It could be the first post on the topic or a reply, but you could have a green thumb or a red thumb, and everything I posted for a while was just full of thumbs. I mean, you were definitely doing them. So it was like Tom Condon, Charles,
Well, there was so many people on there.
There's so many people on there, and just anything I'd post, it was me, Aiden Back, who used to be a kiter that I rode with. He'd just get full red thumb torched as well, and Lucas Hearn as well. The three of us, anything we posted. But I remember I'd just get roasted for videos for dangling, or I remember I like did this back mob one time, my first back mob, where it was on video and I crashed the landing, but out of the video I took screenshots to make it look like a sequence shot.
Yeah.
And I cut, and when I landed on my board and then crashed, but I took sequence screenshots of it and then posted the sequence on Seabreeze. Just made a topic saying I landed my first back mob. And then I thought I'd get away with it, and then someone's like, those are clearly just screenshots from your last video where you crashed this back mob. I just got torched. But then I made...
Well, kids don't have that nowadays, I don't think. They don't have that kind of, like... I'm sure, like, if you asked anyone now that was, like, giving you red thumbs or something, they wouldn't have anything to say about it.
Seabreeze has banned red thumbs now.
Yeah,
that's how the world is now. There's, like, only green thumbs allowed.
But I think if you actually went and asked the people, like, why were they giving you red thumbs, and it was probably just because they were trying to push you to ride better.
Yeah. And for sure it helped, because every time I'd post something, I'd be, like, hoping that someone would finally like it. And be like, oh, you're actually riding better. And then I remember there was a video I made in Perth one year that was actually, I was really happy with it, and all of a sudden I actually had some of these people who were roasting me commenting like, oh man, that was actually pretty good, like I haven't, like, what happened here, like, you've just all of a sudden, like, or that front mode 5 was sick, or that, like, I remember I almost did a front mode 7 in one of them, and people, like, couldn't believe it. They're like, whoa, where's this kid come from who can, like, I didn't land it, but he's, like, trying a front mode 7, and it was pretty decent rotation and attempt. So that was, I think, my first one that was, like, decent. And then I started making videos on my first year on the tour. I just did, like, a video series myself that I edited every little trip I went on. I'd film, I had just my little Canon DSLR, and I'd film lifestyle or whatever, and then get someone to film me. I think you filmed some stuff in Tarifa, and just all the trips I went on, I'd make so I made like 7 decent videos that year. And I think Nash, that year, just making those videos, that was at a time when if you put a bit of effort into making a nice edit and it was shot on a DSLR, you'd get a lot of views.
Yeah, definitely.
So I got a lot of, I think that little video series I did really got my name out that year, more than just a lot of the riders around my stage were just doing the world tour
and nothing
getting
else.
Similar results to me, like anywhere between 9th and 20th, kind of finishing around 10th in the world at the end of the year. But they weren't making videos, they weren't putting themselves online, just thinking I'm competing.
Yeah,
that's what I need. But I was competing, but also making my video series at the same time. And then I think I got pretty well known, well, not well known, but a lot better known than I would have been otherwise, just coming 10th or 15th on the world tour.
Yeah.
So that video series definitely helped. And then that was when I was injured for 2 years. Obviously I didn't make anything, and then when I came back I just did my own little videos. Same thing. I mean, I guess, I don't know.
Well, what was the first video part you made maybe that you were like super stoked on, like, oh, I've done like a level of riding that I was happy with? And
my first trip to Brazil, for sure. I did the video there, and it had my first like double handle passes in it, and then that was pretty good. And then I made a Triple S wildcard video, which was all my best clips from like all my trips I'd done in the last year. And all the trips were like decent apart from each other, but they all had like a couple of good tricks. But then when I put it all together for my Triple S wildcard, I was like, oh man, that was actually
a decent part.
And I had a lot of tricks. And then I won the wildcard for the Triple S with that video, which was so unexpected.
Yeah.
Like I was just making it. I couldn't even go because I had no money. I was literally like, I was in Germany or something at an event I couldn't compete because it was a European titles. Like couldn't pay the entry fee or something, or like I had no money. I was staying with a friend, Mads,
Madsy boy,
And I just had no money and I won it. And then Nash, luckily they were like, oh, well, you've got to go. You're in the Triple S. So Nash paid for my trip there. I went to the UK to stay with my dad for a week before going to the Triple S because he was there and I just had no money to pay for anything. So I stayed there, sorted out my bank account because I was like -100 or whatever in Europe. And then Nash gave me some money for the trip. I think my dad might have given me some money to get me through.
Yeah.
And then my next video part that I think was the best one that I ever made, not the best one I ever made, but the one that I really got noticed for was a trip to Brazil I did after my 2 years of injury. So the Triple S one was before my injury. And then I made this one called Allow It in Brazil. And I just had 2 years off. I'd spent the summer in Hood learning to hit the park, and then I went to Brazil and just was so motivated. I remember getting there and Craig Cunningham, I think, picked me up from the airport or something. And I was just asking, like, who's riding? Like, what are the tricks? What are people doing? And I remember him saying, it was at Tabor. He's like, oh, everyone's riding pretty good. Brandon, Aussie. He said, oh, Aussie's like killing it in the lagoon right now. I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna be the best in the lagoon. Like, got there and Craig was like telling me, oh, Aussie's doing Slim 7s and KGB 5s, which was Aussie was like ripping. He kind of left just as I got there, and then I was just super motivated to ride, and I just rode all day every day. Was learning like tricks every day. I was trying like double grab tricks, which no one had really done much of before, I guess. And then when I made that video, I just got so much feedback. I just couldn't believe it. Like, I'd never had feedback from, like, I'd had feedback from some friends or like a couple of random people, but I had all of a sudden like the internet kind of like
you had
blowing up, like on Facebook or on the websites like Hang Loss or whatever. I think that was like still when they were going. And I had so many people messaging me being like, man, that was insane. Like, you've done, like, I was doing tricks that no one had done before, I guess. Not like new rotations, but new combos of grabs and stuff
like you said, that was still at that time where it was like a good time to make a movie and people actually saw it.
I think that was right at the end. I was lucky. I think I got in, like, with that movie. Like, the next year I did one too. It was probably better. It was probably, I think I'd got the next year, I'd like started to really do a few too many double grabs and got a bit silly with them.
But you definitely improved like the execution style.
Like the video was better the next year, but I think people more expected it the next year because they'd seen the one the year before. So it wasn't like, oh, that video was really sick. It was like, okay, we're expecting a better one next time. So I really tried next year to like have a trick list of like what I need to do stuff better. Some stuff was maybe, I mean, it was a better video, but the year before was like definitely the first one that I made that was.
I think that's always how it is though. If like a rider is kind of new and coming out and they have like, you know, a welcome to a brand kind of part and it would be really good, people would just remember that. And even if they did something that was slightly better later, that people wouldn't remember it as much just because it's not a surprise.
So, and then now obviously the videos I feel like I'm making are definitely better. Again, riding wise, but it's kind of got to the point where proper videos like that almost get lost a little bit. And also you get to the point where people are expecting that kind of video from you. So you don't get as much surprise or people blowing up. They're like, so I think earlier at the start when you first make them, and then it's just so hard to keep being like, I need to make them better and better.
Well, you also have the pressure on yourself that you want to do better than you did before.
And you don't even want to put it out if it's worse.
No, like, and doing what you did before was super hard. And then you want to do another level above that. It's like so many more things are coming into play to try and get that. Like, it's not just you, it's the conditions, it's getting a filmer, it's like being in the right place. Like, you can't just expect that a rider is, even if they are better at a time, is going to be able to put out a better video part because it's just not realistic. I mean,
especially when you do your best video part at the time in Brazil, where it's like, you can't find those conditions anywhere else where you can just go down every day and put, like here. So right now we're on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. And we've been here, 2 months? We haven't had a session where the conditions allow a good trick.
No.
for 2 months, and I've been trying pretty hard, and it's just not working. Like, it's so frustrating, and we're getting some clips, but then I look at them and like
yeah, I mean,
it's not a thing.
It's always the, like, you're trying to get the best clip you can, and you might get a really good clip for that day because the conditions were hard, and you were like, fuck, I got a clip, it was good,
so hard.
But then when you compare it to getting a good clip on a good day, it's like, it's not a good clip anymore.
Yeah, which is something that kiting, it's funny, like, you look at snowboarding or skateboarding, and it's like, okay, a kickflip is not a good trick, or not a hard trick, but a kickflip at a certain spot is like, could be difficult. Insane. But in kiting, it's like, the spot doesn't really change, even though we went out the other day and it was in the river, like the gustiest, just swirliest, horrible wind, kite, like you're just sitting there with the kite down, waiting, comes up. I did like a KGB, like a stale grab KGB or something, and it felt like that was as hard a trick as I've ever done before. That's
as far as you could go on that day.
And it's not even a usable clip. No. But if you think about the spot and the conditions, which you don't see, it was actually pretty hard.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've always felt like there's a lot of that involved with making a video part where people don't recognize or give much credit to where someone actually filmed the video part. Like you said, like in skateboarding, you could do a kickflip somewhere and it would just be trash, but you could do a kickflip at another spot and it would be like the craziest thing someone's done. And I feel like a lot of times, you know, where a good comparison would be riding in Brazil versus riding in Hood River.
Yeah.
People see, you know, Hood River and Brazil on a video, they're both kind of scenic and look nice, and they just assume like, well, you know, that wasn't that good.
Yeah.
But if that person went to Hood River and tried to do something in that wind, they would just not do it. Like, most of the tricks that happen in Brazil off flat water, I think, would be impossible to do in Hood River almost.
Like, I remember I've tried air tricks in Hood River, and it's just so hard. That I've done one good air trick ever in Hood River in like 4 years, where it was literally just because the wind was so gusty and swirly that the gusts hit at the right time. It lulled off at the right time. I did a slim 7 that was like the biggest one I think still to this day I've ever done. Just came in, wasn't even expecting it, had no fins on my board, just gusty water, and just launched for a slim or a front mobe 7, and just got the perfect gust, the perfect slack, and just like, it was so big, and I just rode it in. I was like, I will never do an air trick like that in Hood River ever again. But in Brazil, you can just do that all the time.
Every time. But I mean, you can do it every time, but don't you think that at some point the conditions and how they like play into doing tricks sometimes makes riding or tricks look better? Because people have, like what you said, like they might have got hit by a gust and it just flung them into like some super big stalled out rotation that they hadn't done before or something.
Yeah, for sure.
When everyone's riding in Brazil and they're riding in
it's all the same.
It's really predictable, and it looks really similar to me as well. Like a lot of tricks in Brazil from different people just look the same virtually. Yeah.
I mean, like another trick that I can remember was in Hood River when we were filming for that Stranded video. When there was one day I could do a heel front 9, like if it was good conditions I could do one. But I remember there was like 2 or 3 days in a row where I just wanted to get one for the video, and it was so bad. It was like just the gustiest, most atrocious wind where you'd be coming in not that powered and then be hit by a gust and just be flung off the kicker. So it was kind of scary to like commit to a 9. But then the one that I finally got at the end with the battery on like 1% or whatever was just like the perfect gust that pulled me into the kicker, got loads of slack, like kept my kite low, and it ended up being a really good 9 because, well, I had to really commit to it, but just the gust and all that just really worked well. But for most part it was just too turbulent to do it, whereas you go to Brazil, you could film that video that we did Stranded in Hood River, which took a month of endless shooting and sessions where you come in,
got not one trick.
Or you get out there, you ride around, you're like, I can't even stay upwind now. And your kite falls out and you just walk in. like in Brazil, you could do that in 2 days.
Yeah.
Whereas in Hood River, it takes a month.
It does sometimes seem like you just really like doing something that you shouldn't be doing in Hood River, because it's just insane to try and film a really good video part in Hood River.
Yeah.
But the park's there, so
You have to.
you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
And at some point, it's like what we were saying. I think that now that, you know, there's been some parts in Hood River that have been good, it's like there's a standard there.
Yeah. And to do more is so hard.
And to do more is hard, but I still think, like, if it was that there was a park in Brazil, if it was there was a park somewhere else, I don't really think those, like, parts would be relatable.
No.
I would still look at, like, a part from Brazil or somewhere where there's really clean wind and say, yeah, but they filmed it there. Like, of course it's a better park.
Yeah.
So I think that we're bringing that aspect of what we were talking about with park into kiteboarding, where the location does make a difference because you have the park there. It's like more obvious versus an air trick, which is just kind of looking the same a bit everywhere, but just harder or easier to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Had another little break.
Yeah. Camera batteries died.
We can't sit in chairs for too long anymore either.
Yeah, backs are done.
Backs are done. Yeah, so we've been up here on the sunny coast for a while now, trying to film some stuff for Nash, and we've been going to the cable park quite a bit because it's not windy. How do you feel about like cable and its crossover to kiting? Do you think it's like a helpful tool for riders and kids that are trying to come up to get into cable and do that more?
Definitely. I mean, if you want to, cable's really good tool for progressing your riding. I still enjoy riding cable. I definitely prefer a good kite session by far.
Yep.
I prefer most kite sessions actually. I find cable gets quite monotonous, kind of spinning a lap at the same speed the whole time, but spinning a lap at the same speed with everything the same is great for learning a new trick.
Yeah.
It's one thing that makes kiting kind of hard sometimes is if you live in a bad spot or where the wind's gusty or the water's choppy. You go to the cable park, and if you want to work on your air tricks or even just learning the muscle memory of doing a handle pass, you can just do it on the water or on one of the wide boxes. And then also if you want to get into kite park riding, it's a great way to learn how to hit rails, so that when you build yourself a feature or travel to a park for the first time, you can focus on what you're doing with the kite instead of focusing on not slipping around on your board on the rail.
Yeah.
And even if you are just a freestyle rider and you don't have any interest in hitting kite park, I think it's good. You get more board control, you get more aerial awareness, and you learn also how to do things with the pull coming a lot lower. You don't have the option like you do in kiting of just putting your kite high and dangling.
Yeah.
You kind of have to do things powered, and you have to commit to things.
Yeah.
Because there's no safety net of putting the kite high.
Yeah, you can't change your speed yourself. You just have to go with the cable and
like
bust.
if you're doing an air trick at cable, it is full commitment or nothing. Like there's no little I'll just try a small front roll. You have to load up as hard as you can and throw a big front roll, otherwise you just get smoked. So
which for some people is actually like easier, because there's someone that's not very good at controlling the kite or understanding where to put the kite, and they go to cable and all they have to do is just like
edge.
Commit and edge, and they're like, oh whoa, I can actually do like air tricks.
Yeah. So I think it's good. I also think that kiting offers a lot that cable doesn't offer though. I really miss this year, obviously due to the coronavirus and all that, we're not able to travel to Hood River or Hadlow or Brazil and hit the kite parks. And riding around at cable, I really miss being able to take my own line or choose my own speed or hit things with a different kite angle that allow you to do different tricks, or certain things feel better with the kite turning this way or pulling from there or going faster from the outside. Like here at the cable park, if you want to do an outside hit, for example, you come in from the outside and then you ride back in towards the cable and you lose speed. So I already find cable parks in general just run too slow for me after kiting. Yeah. And then when you're riding back in towards it to do an outside hit, I think you were saying as well, you just feel like you can't even ollie because you're going 31 kilometers or 30, I think Bly's 30 kilometers an hour. And then when you start riding in, you're going like 25 probably.
Yeah.
And that's just not fast enough to do a proper ollie at. So.
And I also think there's the added kind of variable of you could come from the outside with a kite and you land on the rail, but that actually pushes your kite forward, so you carry more speed forward.
Up, yeah.
Whereas at a cable, you can't pull the cable from the cable, so you ollie on the side from the outside, and it more often than not is trying to pull you to the inside.
Yeah.
You're not really like much gliding along the outside.
And you can't really like adjust things on the way. Like kiting, you can, if you're a skilled kiter and you know what to do with your kite, you can adjust. You can be falling off and kind of know you can give it a little pull for a bit of extra tension, or give it a little steer, and save your hit. Whereas cable is like, especially if someone shakes the cable or something, you've got no control over it. Like, so I mean, it's great. Cable's good crossover tool. I also think there should be a lot more cable riders that do get into kiting, but I mean, I just think there's so many more benefits of kiting, especially like here. There's quite a few wakeboarders who they just wakeboard, and then they're all complaining about these windy days. I'm like, you guys live at like
15 minutes from the beach.
15 minutes from like one of the best kickers wave spots, or flat water spots, or surf spots for kiting. Yeah. And you don't do it because kiting's gay, man. Like, it's pretty silly sometimes. It's pretty silly, but we were teaching a few the other day, and hopefully they'll kind of cotton on to it a little bit. But I think.
Well, you get the question from I kind of brought this up because a lot of people will, or not a lot, but there's a few people that will post underneath videos, why don't you just go wakeboarding, or why don't you just go snowboarding, when they see a park video, assuming that all park would be the same. Yeah. And why would you want to do it with a kite?
Yeah, people do ask that a lot, but it's just simply kite park riding is better than cable riding. Yeah. I think. I mean, okay, it's got its challenges. It's hard to find a good park. It's hard to set up a good park.
It's expensive.
It's got its challenges, but when it works, it's just so much better. Like, there's just no comparison.
Well, I think it's also the fact that you have to chase to get the good conditions and get a good session, that you're not just, instantly rewarded with having a good session every time, or having the same thing every time almost. Yeah. So those kind of life challenges make kite park more appealing.
Yeah, more rewarding too.
So we've seen the last few years you're getting into like the big air competitions a bit more. Mm-hmm. I think you've always been a rider that's been into big air and stuff, whether people sort of saw you doing that or not. Yeah. How's that whole kind of scene, do you think? Like the big air scene, the competitions and stuff. What's your take on it, and how do you feel about doing more of that? Or
I mean, I definitely would like to do more of it. It's a shame this year. I really thought I was gonna have a year where I spent quite a lot of time doing it and actually progressing. And I went to Cape Town twice this summer, both short trips. First one was for a Nash shoot for the new Dash, and I felt like I was just getting comfortable a bit more with some big air riding. And then I came home and learnt a few tricks, and I went back to compete in the King of the Air, which I got called up for really last minute. And then unfortunately I got pretty injured in King of the Air with my rib and my knee. Yeah. So didn't really ride for the rest. Well, I couldn't get out of bed for the rest of the trip, basically. Yeah. And then the whole COVID thing hit, and obviously basically cancelled every discipline of kiting for the year. Yeah. It seems like a lot of European riders are getting a lot of strong winds at the moment, but in Australia, I mean, I haven't seen. Had one day of over 15 knots in like the last 2 months, so.
Yeah, winter in Australia is not exactly windy.
Yeah, I was really hyped on it at the start of the year. Felt like I was just getting comfortable with it. I was learning a few little tricks, but I felt like I had so many ideas of what I wanted to achieve this year in big air kiting. Yeah. And unfortunately haven't even had a session to do anything yet. Yeah. So it's a little bit, I'm still motivated to do it again, but now, seeing as I haven't really been doing that much kiting, I'm also motivated we had a kicker wave session here the other day, and I'm pretty hyped to do that. I really want to hit some park again. Yeah. So there's a lot of other things I want to do still, but
Well, it seems like big air kiting is almost harder to get conditions right than riding in a park.
I mean, basically, you just have to go to Cape Town.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no...
You need somewhere that's insanely windy.
Yeah.
A lot of the time.
Yeah.
Or it's just not possible to learn
you can't
to do
even
it
do
well.
it. Like, with the park, at least you can build a little rail for your own. You can build a kicker. We've done all that. And back at home in Melbourne, we've built kickers and rails and messed around with it. You just... With big air, you just... If there's no wind,
you can't go big.
You can't do it. Like and it's dangerous if you try and do it and not enough wind too, because if you have less than 25 knots and you're trying kite loop tricks, you're just going to end up falling out the sky and breaking your knees. So.
Yeah. I mean, you see the people that want to learn like kite loops and they don't understand that the people are throwing it in really strong wind because it's really safer to do it like that. And they're trying to do a kite loop and they're just falling out of the sky onto their legs and breaking an ankle or something. So. Yeah.
So I would like to. I also feel like there's no immediate rush with the big air for me to. I feel like it's something I can hopefully do for a while. Yeah. It seems to be right now anyway. I'm sure it will change when kids start getting a lot better at it, which they already are. But it seems to be one of the disciplines that you can benefit from the longer you've been kiting, and your body gets a bit old for freestyle or park or whatever. You can just excel at it because you've got such good kite control after years of kiting and knowledge of the conditions that you actually get better at it and safer at it the older you get. So whereas with park riding and freestyle and all that stuff, not that I feel like I'm running out of time to do it, but I'm like, I need to, if there's good conditions, I need to do that. Yeah. And I want to make them, while I can learn new tricks and push it, I want to be able to do that.
I mean, anything like park, like skateboarding, snowboarding, wakeboarding, kite park, you've really only got that window where you can do something.
Be at the, like, okay, you can, when you get a bit older, you can try some different things, but if you want to be pushing the sport to like technical, powered riding, you can't do that forever, and I want to focus on that while I can. Yeah. So.
I mean, it makes sense to use your body to the potential you think it can have at that time, and then do what you think you can do later.
Which is a shame also when I see a lot of, this is quite off topic, but when I see Groms coming up and kite brands or shops or something giving them, say you've got a 16-year-old kid who's hyped on kiting and he wants to learn tricks, and they're sold like a bridled kite for beginners. It's such a shame because they're like at the point in their life where a sea kite is perfect for them, and they can go out and learn tricks and get smashed, and they're at that age where they're going to have so much benefit out of having a sea kite, whereas the industry kind of I guess pushes them into a bridled kite, which is still good for them. Of course you can learn stuff, but I also get, when you see a younger rider doing the same, just focusing on big air, it's like, you can do that at any point.
Time,
At that age, you're prime learning for freestyle or park or...
And it almost seems like if they don't spend that time when they're younger doing more freestyle and doing that like type of tricks, I think they don't end up being as good big air rider anyway. Because they lack that finer like motor control of like kite awareness and everything that you get doing those kind of freestyle tricks more.
So I think
even I think like wave riders, I think like the better wave riders are often people that have been fairly good at doing freestyle tricks. Like you see Keahi, he was talking about it before, he was beating him in competitions and he was Australian champion, like junior national champion for a long time, and I think that really like crossed over into wave riding for him, just because it made his kite control really good.
I mean I think Keahi's the best wave rider still there is, but you look at other things that make him the best wave rider. Okay, he's a really good surfer, but his kite control is next level to anyone else. Like he's done all the videos where he does handle passes, like does unhooked wave riding, he can do all that stuff. His strapless freestyle, he started all that, so and that was obviously influenced from his freestyle background as well, so that's pushed him to being that next level wave rider. Whereas if you just...
I mean, he was always into surfing and everything, but if he'd just gone and rode waves to begin with...
he wouldn't have known the freestyle stuff, the unhooking stuff.
I'm 100% certain he wouldn't be as good as what he is now. So
yeah, I think it's good to have Groms riding sea kites or riding boots or trying freestyle, because that's the age when you need to do it. When you're in your late 30s, 40s, 50s, you can go out and get pretty good at big air kiteboarding, but it's pretty hard when you're older to learn the freestyle. So I think it's worth doing it if you've got a younger rider that you want to get into the sport, or if you are a younger rider who's just doing big air, try and learn freestyle, because it's the most technical stuff in kiteboarding that gives you skills that will help your big air riding. Yeah, sure.
So what about something less impact? Lately, you've been foiling a lot. You've gone from someone who's not really surfing to getting into surf foiling, which seemed like quite a bit of a jump for you to like be in the waves and picking the waves right. How's that whole experience been, and what do you think about like the foiling and the surf foiling and everything?
I'm really enjoying it. Partly it's right now where we are, it's one of the only activities we've got with the conditions are actually good for. It's actually a pretty decent spot for the surf foiling. But it's been kind of hard. I just started to learn surfing this year and back in Victoria, and I was getting alright, but the paddling was... I've actually only now just started to kind of not have like neck pain while I'm paddling, because I've finally started to open up, I guess. I've never done that before. And reading the waves a little bit better now, I can kind of look at the back. I'm like looking at the back and seeing which way they're coming and starting to be able to paddle over to them a bit better, which a lot of surfers just have naturally. But yeah, that's super fun. I mean, I think it's actually a pretty good sport. It makes a lot of sense, the surf foiling. I think it will continue to kind of be there. It is obviously a lot more expensive and a bit less accessible than surfing, so it's not gonna get to those levels, but right now the gear's progressing quite a lot, and there's a lot of stuff that's kind of still hasn't been done in foiling, and I don't know, I'm just really enjoying it at the moment, and it's good for your body. I'm feeling like fitter than I've ever felt right now from the foiling. Well, it's low impact. You're not actually like doing that much. Landing. You're like doing like 100 squats a session with no weight, and like the cardio is pretty insane. Like if you catch 3 waves in a row pumping back out or something, you're completely trashed afterwards. But you don't feel bad, you just feel tired. So I think that's been pretty good at the moment, and it's definitely something that's pretty good for your body. And you just can't like go and hit kickers all day every day. No, it's just not sustainable. And I think at least surf foiling is like a sport that you can do when there's nothing else to do. Like you've said here, there's just tiny waves, and I couldn't surf. I didn't really want to go to cable. You couldn't go kiting. It's like, what else are you going to do? You don't want to go for a run. You might as well you might as well go for a run on the water and do some laps. Like I've been wanting to learn how to surf here, because I was progressing quite a lot at home, and I was getting to the stage where I was like, every session was like my best ever session, just because I'd like learn something or like figure something out a bit more. But since we've come here, it's like I tried to surf for the first 2 weeks, and it was just so bad every single time. I don't think I've surfed for like 2 weeks now, 3 weeks pretty much. I had that one session where it was just like heavy shore dump, which I'm not really ready for, so just been surf foiling. So what which riders do you think has inspired you? So what wing do you have? What wing do you have? But the 2000. Complete lift pig. I'm an absolute lift pig, so I've just got the biggest thing you can get. That's understandable. It's pretty hard not to be a total lift pig. Easy to get down that road. Just pump back out. Pump around. So which riders have inspired you over the course of kiteboarding the most, do you think? Like where do you think you've taken most inspiration from? It was Aaron and Andre, Phillip. Dre obviously kind of stopped pushing being a pro rider probably as I was kind of getting more into it. So I never really sessioned that much with Dre. I had a few at Triple S towards the end of his competitive career when he wasn't I guess he just wasn't like at that point in his career where he was just pushing it and trying to learn, and he was just cruising around for fun, still riding really good, but I never really got to session with him at his like most motivated and his best, and it was kind of when he was really better than everyone else. Aaron Hadlow, obviously, for forever.
Yeah.
And then lately riding with, I think, Christophe Tack, kind of showing people when he, obviously the year he won his world title, just like showing people you can do different tricks. So it's like, he obviously did NBDs, which is a never been done trick in competitions, which not many people can say they've done.
He stood out a lot at that point in time.
Yeah.
I was judging at the time, and it was like when he won that world title was really, really clear to me, like he's just far and beyond better than the other people, because he was going to every comp and he was doing a new trick in every heat at every comp, where everyone else would have their routine of 5 or 6 tricks, and they would follow that routine like every time.
The whole year.
And Christophe would, if there was wave kickers, he would do wave kicker tricks. If there was flat water, he'd do flat water stuff. Like, and if the conditions were just different, he was just selecting different tricks.
And he was still good on like a 6-7 meter kite in Le Cat, or a 15 meter kite in wherever it might be, with choppy Germany and 15 knots of.
I've said it before, but I don't really think, even though he did win, I don't think he was like really rewarded enough for that kind of variety.
Well, I think he also, talking to him, he kind of, that was his goal for his whole life, and then he got it. And obviously I think it happens with a lot of people though. You win, you get your goal, you win your world title, and you realise like, oh, there's more to it than that maybe.
You think something's magically going to happen when you win a world title, but it doesn't. Nothing changes, you just have a world title.
I guess I was pretty, other riders, I was pretty looked up to Alex Pastor for quite a while as well. He was, especially when he was at the top of the kiteboarding, he was really pushing proper execution and style for quite a long time, compared to quite a few of the other people on tour. He really stood out and actually really cared about his tricks more than others. And then riding with Brandon as well over the last few years, and Sam Light. I think those two, especially when I was getting into the park scene, Brandon and Sam Light were like the two who were just clearly the best two. I think Billy Parker was also one of the best, but he'd just do one competition a year and come up podium like every time. But Sam and Brandon were, I mean, Sam was obviously, when I started doing it, just the one to beat. So he was not only like the one I wanted to beat, but also the one that I'd like base what I had to do off. And look up to him and just be like, that's what it takes right now, so I've got to do that.
Not a bad person to try and replicate. He's had like a pretty clean career and like a really clean style over all the years that he's been kiteboarding. So
even if you look at his earlier videos when he was riding Nash and stuff, or even earlier than that when he was still Nash but doing like PKRA and stuff, he was still doing different trick or clean tricks and proper execution, and which I feel like I kind of was too. I never learnt all the dangly front mob 5s and back mob 7 type tricks and all those things, and pull-ups and all that, which I don't think he really did either. But yeah, he's always, even his freestyle videos, I think he's really underrated for his freestyle. I mean, he hasn't put out a ton of freestyle videos, I think, which is also like a thing that park riders seem to get. I get too, like Noe gets, and Sam and Brandon and all the park riders who are really good at freestyle, but they're seen as just park riders. And they don't really get the credit for their freestyle. Like Sam's done freestyle tricks that no one's done before. He did a part full of NBDs, pretty much. Like KGB rewind with a nose grab, like no one's done that. But people don't really think of him for some reason as one of the best ever freestyle riders, even though he clearly is. Like he's some of the freestyle people who are rated the best freestyle riders right now, he's just so much better than them. Like there's no doubt.
And you give a bit more of a period of time, and those people that are in the spotlight will kind of just fade away because they didn't actually do anything different.
Yeah.
They just added the 180, and then there'll be someone that adds the 360, and you've forgot about that person that did it with the 180 before. So yeah, I think definitely Sam Light stood out for a long time.
Yeah.
Christophe, I mean, Christophe's pretty well known for freestyle though, but he's still a really good park rider as well.
That's the same with him in park as well as Sam in freestyle. I think Christophe's not rated highly enough in park. I mean, he was vice world champion on the KPL last year, but for some reason people don't think of his, I mean, because he's so good at freestyle obviously, and he's freestyle world champion, but there's park hits that Christophe does that no one else does as well. There's kicker hits, there's rail hits, like crazy outside back flips that he does, stuff like that. Like really,
he has a lot of variation. I mean, that's super hard to come from, in my opinion, to be a freestyle world champion and then also be a park world champion or vice world champion.
Yeah,
that's a pretty big jump. I mean, he's the closest out of anyone.
Yeah,
and its only other person, I guess, is Carolina's also being a freestyle champion and a park world champion.
Yeah, and it shows. I mean, there's not many people that can do it cross. I mean, Aaron's done it, King of the Air and freestyle. Actually, I don't think he's won Triple S, Aaron, but he's been at the top of the park scene for a long time as well. But Christophe definitely doesn't get his park recognition as high as he probably should as well. So,
well, yeah, that's what happens in sports, I guess. What about other athletes and sports that you're into? Who kind of, is there other people that inspire you from other sports, like to do better in kiting, or is it just like you're just simply looking at kiteboarding?
No, I mean, I'm looking at other sports a bit, probably different over the years. I mean, I used to really be into like football and tennis and stuff like that, and I still follow them quite a lot. Which I don't feel like you just need to be inspired by board sport athletes, because it's like a whole mentality thing, and now I'm kind of inspired by athletes who can do what they're doing at the top for longer. And like, even if they're not, I don't know, people, even if they're not like the kind of riding or sport or whatever that I'd like to see, it's just crazy to see people pushing it when they get older, or
having a long career,
and just when you look back at what they've done, they've just been like doing the right things their whole career, and not selling out to things, and not doing, obviously people make mistakes or they have silly things, but like someone like Tony Hawk, for example, who's 50 now, and he still posts NBDs like in half pipe or whatever, which is just insane for a 50-year-old. Or a Kelly Slater type thing, or but I don't know, I don't really follow the professional surfing as much. Skateboarders as well, I watch a bit of skateboarding, but I'm not like super into it. I also can't really do it, so I can't really relate that hard. Wakeboarding, I kind of go in and out of following lots as much, but I think I also like different people to what wakeboarders seem to like or think is trending, or
who do you like wakeboarding?
I mean,
what's the thing that you like to see?
I like to see in any board sport people kind of doing things properly and not following certain trends, kind of doing things how it's come naturally to them. So I like seeing people who've got a style that is.
So you don't like people just biting other people's style? Like
no.
Someone sees someone do like a whippy 270 and then they just copy it.
And then they copy it, and then everyone does it, and then like, I guess something like the narrow stance of Dylan Miller. So Dylan Miller he's a pro wakeboarder. He's clearly not one of the best wakeboarders. No. He knows that. Everyone knows that. But he did his own like narrow stance thing and his own style, which is actually kind of cool, and his videos are really good, and he does do some pretty good tricks as well. But then that kind of sparked a whole load of people trying to ride like him, and just copying his style and ripping them off. And even if they're better, all of a sudden people think, oh, that person's really stylish. It's like, no, they're not, they're just copied. Dylan Miller's the stylish one.
Yeah.
You've just copied his style.
Uh-huh.
Or like something that I really like watching now is people like Raf Jerome and Daniel Grant, who haven't gone to the silly super narrow stance type riding, and they still do, like, say you watch a 270 off from, I think we were talking about this the other day, from a lot of riders now, they do this weird little, like, they'll be doing a front lip on a rail or whatever, and then do this weird little trendy whippy 270 off. I prefer seeing like a big, like, holding the front lip, bouncing out the press and doing like a kind of more square 270 out,
more stalled out,
really stalled out, like really on purpose type rotation.
Yeah, like you're sure that you're doing that, you're not just going through the air and then just before you land whipping the board around and landing.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who still like that stuff though. Like, so many people who still, I feel like it's, for some reason, a lot of older board riders though like seeing things like, you say, what's your favourite trick? Like, oh, just a big stalled out back one.
Yep.
Like, which, same for me, but it seems like a lot of people are kind of losing that, what the idea of style is now changing to just whatever's trending right now.
Yeah, I feel like wakeboarding follows a lot of, it's more trend based than a lot of other sports because they're in that same environment all the time where things are so similar that they really just trying to do anything to get away from whatever is the norm at the time. Even if it's not actually better, it doesn't look good, they're just trying to do something that's not the same thing as what it once was. So yeah, riding a different board with a narrow stance, doing some different weird spins and stuff. I guess where maybe that goes wrong is when they think like that's what's good. Yeah. And the only thing that's good is that. Yeah. Then you've just got all these people that might not really be good riders, but they're doing the right thing at the time and they become like successful.
Well, I feel like that's a little bit in wakeboarding with people like Raf Jerome and Daniel Grant, for example. There are a lot of people who still recognise them as the best, but there's a lot of people now who are kind of the ones doing the videos and all, like, where the content and the likes and the flows come from, for some reason don't see those two as the best riders, which I believe those two are the best park riders there are still. Yeah. Like Raf Jerome, just in that formats film part. Yeah. Was his winch section, like he's just far beyond everyone else. Like, so insanely better than everyone else. But because he's not posting on Instagram every day as well, probably he just, and then Daniel Grant as well, just like constantly just doing insane stuff. Just constantly. And I think because he's not doing narrow stance trendy stuff for some reason, even though he like started the whole big board thing, he started it in wakeboarding, and like everyone for some, I don't know, I just think he's still almost, he's not underrated in the thing, but I feel like a lot of people for some reason think, oh, this person's the best in the world, or this is the guy who's doing the best right now, when it's clearly still Daniel Grant.
Well, I think it was like you were saying before when we were talking about video parts, it's when someone's done a lot of good things already, then people expect a lot from that person. When it's like, well, if you watch the things Daniel Grant's done, he's almost gone as far as you can go in lots of things. Like, what is next to do for him? Yeah, like someone will do some crazy rewind now and everyone will blow up, but then you forget that Daniel Grant did that 10 years ago when he was 13 years old or whatever. Like, yeah, even some air tricks and stuff he was doing when he was just a little kid, and people don't even remember that he's done that already. And
I think it's a little bit the same with Aaron and kiting. Like, I remember talking to Sam one time about learning new tricks and NBDs, and he'd be like, man, every time you think you've done an NBD, Aaron's done it. Yeah. Like, there'll be some video of him in foot straps in 2004 where he was just mucking around and did that trick. Like, he's just done everything.
I think that's even the same for a lot of kiting now, just not Aaron. It's people think they've done a new trick. But it was a trick in 2008 that like a fair few people were doing. Yeah,
like the whole back mob 7 thing right now. Yeah. Yeah, like people have done that. They just, you might be doing it better now, but people have done it.
You do a bit better execution, then maybe a bit worse, then a bit better. Like, well, we're getting close to wrapping it up, but I'd just like to hear what maybe your favourite video parts, some of your favorite video parts, because we'll put them in the description below and people can check them out.
Over the years, I guess. Christophe's Mowgli's Jungle ones. Obviously the Bubble from Noe and all those guys. That De Brazil one from Sam Light and Alex Fox.
Any more obscure ones? We get these ones quite a bit.
God, there'd be some obscure ones.
I'm gonna let him dig some up.
Yeah, I'll dig some up and we'll put them in the description. Some weird videos that I used to watch.
It's kind of hard to get put on the spot and just know what is a good video and remember what you're watching. Man, there's millions of videos I watched over the years that I would think are good, and it's hard to dig them up. So right, so we've been sitting here with this board for a while. What's the go here? It says Ewans JASPAN Pro Nash 152 Traverse. What's happening here?
Yeah, so this is the Traverse. It's my first pro model in kiteboarding, which I'm pretty happy with. It's something I've wanted for a while. Kind of started last year talking about making a new design for Nash, for the board lineup, having something really different in the lineup that really stands out from that standard kiteboard design, which is a 138 by 42 type thing. So yeah, we got the go ahead and I got my request of a pro model accepted. And yeah, this is what we've come out with. I kind of started the whole design process looking at different boards that I really like, trying a lot of different boards at kiting, wakeboarding, whatever, kind of trying to piece together a board that I really wanted to focus on as like a true free ride type board. Whereas in kiteboarding right now, if you go into a shop and ask for a free ride board, they'll basically think you're a beginner and you want a square 138. And my idea of free riding is very different to the general industry thoughts of what free riding is. When I think of free riding, I think of, say, snowboarding free riding, where you're just cruising down a mountain, like jibbing things, doing carves, laying into powder, like just bonking things. A more versatile board. Yeah, like something really fun, or like doing styled out grabs. And that's kind of what I've enjoyed riding a lot lately, kiting too, is just mucking around, hitting random obstacles that are at your local spot, like channel markers or piers or rocks, and just being able to carve around and do different things. And this is kind of where this came from. So it's like a longer shape, longer outline, nice smooth rocker, not too much going on the bottom. So it's really playful, really carvy. The long rail feels really nice carving. In the waves it feels really nice, like slashing waves. It's just a really smooth feeling board. And yeah, I think everyone who's been riding it at Nash and all the demos are really enjoying it so far. It's just kind of hitting the markets now. And yes. So the idea with it, though, if I'm not mistaken, is to ride a longer board than you normally would, right? Yeah. It's narrower and longer versus being shorter and wider, like a lot of boards. So the surface area isn't too different, really. It doesn't feel like you're riding a ridiculously big board. You just have more rail and more tip and tail to play with. Yeah. Rather than just kind of a locked-in little square, which is really good for, say, big air riding, where you just want to line a wave up and hold as much power as you can. Yeah. But I feel like for what most people do, this kind of board is actually more fun. You plane earlier, you carry more speed into things. And yeah, so like last year I've been riding a 142 or a 145 in the park sometimes. But this feels quite similar in terms of the amount of power I can hold down. Yeah. But it's a 152. So say you were riding a 138 before, you'd maybe want the 144 of this board. It feels very similar. That's how we've been testing it back to back. And then the 138 is actually a really tiny board. You pick it up and you're like, wow, this thing's really small because it's so narrow. For women or small people. So Katie, my girlfriend's riding that 138 and she's pretty small. And so that's one thing, is also with this kind of board, it's going to take a little bit of education in the kite market, I think.
Yeah.
It's still something that's trickling through. Obviously, you've got one similar idea as well, and there's a few other brands that are doing it, but it's still seen for some reason as a wake trend, and not actually something that is functional and just in general more suited to what most people actually want to do in kiteboarding.
Yeah.
So even, I mean, this kind of board with foot straps or anything is just far more fun and playful and slashy, and it's something that we still need to educate people towards. That, for example, I've seen a few shops already that have got the board in.
Yeah.
They didn't order a 152.
Yeah.
And then I go down the beach and there's guys like, oh wow, is that you're riding, like they see me riding it and obviously having a good time, and it's not just a door, it's actually a functional 152.
Yeah.
Like that's amazing. Like I want to, and I'm like thinking, well, they're not, most places are just stocking the 138 and the 144 because they're still scared of the number 152. It's almost like we should put surface area on it.
It is the similar thing with the board I've made here. It's a 155 and people would look at 155 and just think, oh my god, that's like the biggest light wind board I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that the width and the rocker and the way the board's made is to be functional for a normal person.
Maybe it's like a high aspect pump wing. We need to put surface area on it to stop scaring people.
Well, honestly, I think I've always been really surprised in kiteboarding that people assume like a 138's a small board, a 142's a big board. It's 4 centimeters, and I guarantee if you had the same width, they would not tell.
Yeah.
If you took the sizes off boards, I think a lot of people could not tell the difference in 4 centimeters.
And it's also a different style of board. It's like you look at someone who's really into surfing, they'll have a 9'6" log. They'll have like maybe a 7-foot mid length. They'll have like a 6'6" step up. They'll have a 6-foot performance board, a 5'6" fish, and like a 4-foot foamy for mucking around.
Yeah.
So you've got, that's like a real surfing addict who's got a lot of boards, but they all have their function.
Well, even a normal person's going like I have a few boards and I'm going from like, you know, a 5'6" twin fin up to like a 6'4" single fin.
Yeah.
That's a lot of difference in length.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing as riding along with the kite.
Like there should just be different styles of board. You could even have a 152 and a 132 for big air, for really strong wind, stuff like that. So I think it's still something that I think it will come with if we get more of these types of boards into demos for shops and just get people to try it, because people try it and they instantly they get it.
Well, I think it's the same reason that people like to ride a surfboard, is that they're planing all the time and they don't have a lot of downtime where they're bogging.
Yeah.
And people that are sold a 136 or a 138 in a shop, usually it's just far too small of a board.
Yeah.
So obviously they're going to hate it. They're just going to be bogging, and it's going to be like stopping, starting, pulling by their harness a lot.
And they're really flat, so through the chop they're like aggressive. And
getting spray in their face because they don't have enough tip to ride over the chop.
Yeah. So, yeah. I think this is pretty exciting. I think it's definitely going to be something that will happen more and more in kiteboarding, especially just for that free rider who wants to go out and do some carves and do some grabs, do some nice stylish back rolls, which is something that I also think is a style of riding that needs to be pushed more in the sport, rather than people getting into it and being like, I'm too old for freestyle, or being too old for freestyle and wanting to still go out and learn a Rayleigh to blind or an S-bend to blind and just getting smashed, and then all of a sudden they just get over riding a twin tip because they think, I can't ride a twin tip anymore, I'm too old. Whereas they could go out and slash waves, learn like a 6 tail glide off a kicker or a tail glide, or learn
butter slide, or
like butter slides, and like nice sold out back rolls off waves, things like that. Like anyone can do that, but it's not really a discipline that's
it's not promoted a lot.
Promoted in the sport.
No.
It's like you do freestyle on a twin tip, or you do big air on a twin tip, or you're too old for it and you get a surfboard and a foil. Whereas there's still so much more on a twin tip that you can do, even if you don't want to smash yourself in boots trying new tricks. You get a nice longer board. You can ride it finless. You can ride it with fins. I mean, riding finless is just opens up so many things that you'd never thought of doing before. And even just taking your fins off, riding around for 10 minutes, you all of a sudden get the idea of, oh, I could try like do a slide like this, or I could
Yeah.
try carve, and then at the end of the carve I can like throw my tail of the board out and then bring it back because
Yeah.
I don't have fins.
And a bigger board is actually easier to ride finless than a smaller board would be, because you've got the rocker there, you're not going to catch a tip or
and
a
you've
rail
got
as much.
the rail is a lot of the time what produces the grip as well, which is something like in this board we haven't gone for the step down rail like a lot of twin tips have these days with a really sharp rail, because that actually doesn't provide a lot of grip. It makes the board on the shelf look thinner, which means it looks lighter, but actually a thicker rail gives you more grip. So
Yeah.
I think riding finless as well, or riding overpowered, is nice to have a thick rail.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of the thick rail.
Yeah,
Well, that's it, I think.
that's it, we're done.
Thank you. Thank you for talking to us. Thank you for educating us about the pleasures of big boards.
Yes.
I hope you guys have enjoyed this. This has been another low-budget Line Club production.
Quite a lot of camera equipment around.
If you're still here listening to us, yeah, I appreciate it. Give us some feedback in the comments. Tell me who you want to see on the show. Give me a good roast. Anything's welcome. And I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers guys. Hope you enjoyed listening to us talk a bit of shit. Talk very deep into kiteboarding, I guess, if you're not... Yeah, might not have listened to a lot of that type kiteboarding banter before, but yeah. Hopefully it's interesting to you, and look forward to the next one.
Cheers.